had been in the restaurant industry for many, many years. And with that, had gotten real good at the like work hard, party hard lifestyle. And when I found running, it was at a juncture in life where that just wasn't really working for anymore. I was kind of tired of being out all night partying, and running really seemed to fill that void and kind of refocus where I was putting my attention and my energy. And the reality is just if you get into running and all of a sudden you like it more than going out to the bar, there's really no time for the bar because it's like it's one or the other. I can't stay out all night and then get up early and go for a run before work. So.
Oh, Robbie, thank you so much for being on the show.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Question for you. I'm a huge fan and really, really am inspired by your work. Do you, when somebody says how much of an inspiration you are, what goes through your head immediately? What comes to mind when somebody says that?
It's an honor to hear that for sure. Definitely a little bit of imposter syndrome sets in as well. But yeah, I mean, I definitely strive for big, audacious feats and efforts. And in those, if I can inspire others, that's definitely one of the main reasons I do it. So yeah, it feels like a job well done too.
Good. It's almost funny to hear you talk about still having that imposter syndrome. Those thoughts come up after. And I want to get into kind of the elements that I like to talk about in terms of a holistically healthy lifestyle, which includes, for me, the elements are movement, nutrition, mindfulness, sleep, and connection or purpose. And so, I mean, it kind of just makes sense to talk about movement first. And on the little form I asked you to put some input in before we got on this, you said, I like to run. That might be an understatement, but because if we want to start with movement, or you said I run a lot or something, look, you've challenged your physical body in ways very few people ever will, right? I mean, just in the last few years, and you started running not all that long ago compared to a lot of ultra athletes, right? Like how long, when did you start running?
Yeah, not too terribly long, 8 years ago, but more like, when I started in life, it was when I was 29, 37 now. So yeah, a little late to the game, but since kind of made up for lost time.
Yeah, you could say that. So just in the last few years, you ran 3,175 miles or something along those lines across the United States in 75 days. You set a world record completing 16 laps of 6.1 kilometers, and that's over 100 miles in around Central Park in a single day. Colorado Crush, I watched that documentary, which is phenomenal. Talk about being inspired. That was hiking 485 miles on the Colorado Trail, summiting all 58 peaks that are over 14,000 feet. And I did one. And I was so proud of myself, can I tell you? Doing one, you did 58, and running the trail, what was it, the series?
It's the Leadville Trail series.
The Leadville Trail series, yes, yeah. Which was a marathon, a 50-miler, and a 100-miler, all in one freaking summer. What the hell? Okay. Yeah. Oh, and then you just did the Tesla challenge. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. Outlasted the battery life of the Tesla. So I had to run for 242 miles in just over 3 days to surpass, where the battery died of a Tesla.
Okay. So that's freaking mind blowing. How much of this is actually about the physical movement and what you're doing with your physical body versus the mental aspect and other benefits, emotional, spiritual? Where's the balance there for you?
I think it's a sliding scale that's progressively becoming more mental. Over the years, after doing these large efforts, with each one, my body becomes more adapted and in line with the task at hand. Where then it's the mental, emotional side of it is what's most required to execute them, but also probably where I get the most benefit. These all end up being very transformative experiences and places where I learn a lot about myself and commune with a lot of great people. So at this point, probably more mental. Early on when you're running, it's definitely more of a physical game. You got to get your body conditioned to what you're asking it to do. But yeah, over time, it kind of switches.
Okay, so when you're not doing these huge challenges or training for them, which seems like you've got to be almost always either doing one or training for one, but like on a normal everyday basis, when you're not focused on preparing for one of these, what is your physical routine? What do you do in terms of movement? And I've kind of transformed my mindset around movement from fitness to movement. Where are you on that? Fitness, exercise, movement. What's that relationship like for you?
It's really just a way of life at this point. As much as I run, to think of it as fitness, to think of it, as movement, all of those apply. But it's really like my practice. It's one of the things that really helps me to be the best version of myself. And with that, if I'm training or not, I usually try to get in at least about 10 miles a day. I usually don't go out for less than 10-mile run. So anything between there and 20, 5, 6 days a week.
Wow. Is there any well, what has to happen for you to continue doing that day after day in terms of recovery? And do you do mobility? Do you do any other practices to support your running?
More so recently, I incurred an injury, rolled my right ankle pretty bad. So right now, working on kind of strength training in that ankle, a little bit of like balance and mobility stuff, and then also riding my bike a lot. But it's really all just a service getting me back into running. Um, so pretty linear in that aspect of it. I found this one thing I really like to do, and I do it often. Um, but it does end up being like a holistic practice. In order to train and achieve the things I do, it requires a good bit of thought into food choices, and those kind of transpire, or like those kind of parlay into recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Plant based, and a lot of the reasons for that are the recovery aspects. I find that sticking to a clean, whole food, plant based diet, I recover much more quickly, and have much less soreness. So it's a big component. And then also the rest side of it. I'm a really big fan of having downtime and having time for my body to reset, repair, and build back up.
But also still being able to run 10 miles every day.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Do you think everybody, and this is kind of a selfish question because I consider myself a pretty fit person. Running does I have never been able to get to a place where running feels good, feels natural, doesn't hurt my body. Do you think running is for everybody?
I do. I mean, I think barring, some major, physical obstacles, I think a lot of it comes down to learning how to run. And a lot of that is, I think we're taught at a young age that running means sprinting. And the reality is if you slow it down, what maybe in the beginning, what would be slow enough for it to make sense is actually a walk. But if you stick with it over time, you progressively get faster, and your body goes from, you know, maybe like a sedentary place to doing that. There's a lot of adaptation that can occur. So I do think everybody's capable of it. I think having the right direction and like mindset around it is really important, but we can all get there for sure.
Well, let's talk about, and I'm sure having extra weight on you, you haven't always been as lean as you are now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that helps too. It's like getting into a runner's body. And definitely have come a long ways in those 8 years of running that I've been doing. So yeah, losing a little bit of weight, getting lean definitely helps.
Okay. So how did you start that first, wasn't it like 2.5 miles with your now fiance, or is that the story?
Yeah, now wife, but
Oh, no
we
wife.
yeah. Yeah, I was living a much different life when this all started. Had been in the restaurant industry for many, many years, and with that had gotten real good at the like work hard, party hard lifestyle. And when I found running, it was at a juncture in life where that just wasn't really working for anymore. I was kind of tired of being out all night partying, and running really seemed to fill that void and kind of um, refocus where I was putting my attention and my energy. And the reality is just if you get into running and all of a sudden you like it more than going out to the bar, there's really no time for the bar
Mhm.
because it's like it's one or the other. I can't stay out all night and then get up early and go for a run before work. So
Yeah.
that was kind of where the transition started.
Yeah, I think for a lot of our audience, we've got a lot of entrepreneurs and professionals, and uh, some of the clients I've worked with, they'll have that one habit at the end of the day, because a lot of these people are very dedicated and very, focused on career. And at the end of the day, that glass of wine, or that gets in that cycle of, oh, I just need to unwind, but then you don't feel as good the next day. What would you say to the people that are so dedicated and so invested in their business, and they will put their head down and go go go, yet they can't seem to stick with a commitment to their own physical well-being?
I think it'd be a lot of it would be around getting your mind right around the fact that that's the physical thing, whatever it is, whatever that practice is, if it's running, if it's whatever Pilates, it's going to positively affect that thing that you are so regimented and focused on. And once you get your mind around that and you see those benefits, it becomes a lot easier because it just like furthers your obsession in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you just got to be careful though. Then it all of a sudden the the obsession can pivot and it comes more about the movement and the exercise than the thing you cared so much about in the beginning. I mean, that's what happened to me. A lot of it was to become to maintain accountability and become more accountable to my role as a leader within the restaurants I was running. And then, fast forward 4.5 years later, I left the restaurants and now I run professionally. So
Yeah, well, a big change in lifestyle and focus and purpose
yeah.
and connection and all that. So yeah, let's get into the nutrition side of things, because you referenced that already. How long have you been plant-based?
So I think we're going on about 5 years now.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It was not too long before I decided to run across the United States. It was kind of initially it was a move for environmentalism, finding that plant-based diet is one of the most impactful things an individual can do to help curb climate change. But I quickly found that from a performance standpoint, it was also very beneficial, and that was really what grounded me in it.
And so what is your daily, if you had a typical kind of day, do you have a typical day of what you eat, what you consume?
Yeah, I think so. It's I think you'll always find a lot of legumes in there. Do a lot of rice and beans around here. And in the morning, starting off just like pretty light. I don't often eat before I go for my run, especially if I get up and get it done. And then coming back and just like really focusing on hydration, and often a really like clean smoothie, really frozen fruit, veggies, protein powder, and some other things in there too. But yeah, and then throughout the day, again, rice and beans is a big thing in our house. I like to make a good like lentil burger. And in the evenings, definitely, I probably eat more like half of my calories of the day in my last meal. It's just always kind of been my style, even before being plant based. But yeah, I find that it's really easy to be plant based. I get a lot of questions about, what do you eat? Can you send me a recipe book recommendations? And the reality is like anything you want to eat, if you just Google it with vegan in front of it, you'll find a really good option. And just with looking at those, trying to find the ones with the least amount of processed ingredients.
Did you start out doing it the whole food plant-based way, or did you go through any periods of eating more of the processed vegan kind of junk food?
I mean, it's amazing how fast this space has evolved. And I would say even like, what was it? If it was 5 years ago, there was still, I mean, I don't think Beyond Meat existed yet. So it was probably a little easier almost to not rely on those crutches of those things. But I don't stay away from 110%. Like, like I understand that the best option for me is going to be the whole food side, but I also don't want to get lost in the rigidity of it, because then that's when I would decide it was just too big of a pain and revert back to other things. So I think it's important for everybody to kind of take themselves somewhat seriously, but then again, let's not get too caught up, because if so, yeah, practices become a lot harder and it's easier just to fall back into bad habits.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement. So I went vegan or plant-based in 1995.
Okay.
And yeah, so I remember so there was just no choice, right? There was literally nothing. And I remember when the first vegan cheese came out in like, I don't know what, 1997 or something. And it was the most horrific thing. Like,
Yeah.
no way are you going for the vegan cheese. I mean, only now I feel like is some of the vegan cheese really, really getting good. But yeah, back then it was so nasty.
Yeah. It's
Rubber.
there's
It was
so
literally like rubber. It was so
yeah.
gross.
Some have really come a long ways. There's some
Yeah.
we really, really enjoy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, shout out to Miyoko because she's just
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
She's crushing it.
She's crushing it. I'm gonna have her on the show.
Awesome.
Yeah. So okay. So you've got your whole food plant-based way of eating, just a part of your lifestyle, not going too crazy with it. Do you pay any particular attention to protein or anything that you feel like is necessary to support your runs? Is it extra carbohydrates, extra protein? Where are you?
It depends. It depends on what I'm up to. In the middle of big efforts, we usually focus on high fat, high carbohydrates in training and stuff. As of recent, I've definitely put a little more focus on protein. I got like a gut health panel done to find that I was maybe a little short on the protein side of things.
Mm.
So right now, really just kind of supplementing once a day with like some protein powder, and then also just assuring that I get all of those beans in. That's really where a lot of mine comes from.
And do you have many people that kind of question your eating habits or whether that's really the best for athletic performance?
Not as much anymore. I think definitely early on, it was one of the reasons I decided to run across the U.S. was I was always also like already running a lot, and then I started to transition these food choices, and I had a lot of like family members and yeah, people that care about me and I care about who genuinely concerned were like, I just don't think you can do that. Meat, you need meat for strength. And that was like kind of my hold my beer moment where I was like, well, I'm going to go run across the US and show you otherwise. And, at this
I'll
point,
show
I think,
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think I've now kind of proven myself enough that it doesn't really come up much more if the conversations are along the lines of just like, are other options valid? And, what are my thoughts on other dietary choices? And yeah, that's a whole nother rabbit hole.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So running and mindfulness, how are they related to you?
They're one feeds the other for sure. Like when I'm running, I feel like the world right now is full of so many distractions and things that are meant to bring us out of ourselves. And so through these, especially these big efforts, I'm able to kind of center back in and really pay attention to my wants, desires, and yeah, I find that a lot of clarity comes through the running, and that directly, yeah, affects mindfulness for sure.
Do you have other mindfulness practices that involve sitting still?
Yeah, yeah, I think like one that really folds in kind of two aspects is both mindfulness and then also sleep is one of my sponsors is Newcom, and it's a neuroscience technology that through neuroacoustic software and a couple other things, you're able to drop into alpha theta waves, which is where our brain goes during deep meditation. So I use that to assist me in getting the most like restful recovery possible. And through that, it also balances your autonomic nervous system and leaves you just feeling a little more grounded and able to deal with the disappointments and setbacks that life sometimes gives you. So that's a big part. And then that feeds into just sleeping better at night as well.
What other sleep hygiene do you, besides that, is there screen time that you cut out? Do you have other habits?
I wish I was better at that one for
Yeah.
sure. I think
Yeah.
the screen time, I'm finding that really, I think where it affects me the most is in the mornings, like finding that I have a bad habit right now of waking up and jumping right on my phone and quickly to often to social media, to be honest. Like, it's social media is a big part of how I, establish my career within this running. So I'm always interested to see what's like type of trends have happened the night before.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's really good for me. So I would like to eliminate that a lot, out. Um, yeah, I think that's a big component. I found that caffeine is a hell of a drug and probably best to stay off of it after about noon, or it definitely negatively affects my sleep in the evenings and also anxiety levels.
Mm.
I think those are both two so readily available aspects of society right now. Like, I mean, I don't know how many friends that I hear talk about they're battling anxiety to find out they drink like 4 cups of coffee a day.
Mm.
It's like,
Mm.
maybe eliminate a little bit of that.
Has anxiety been a theme in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. One thing that I'm constantly working through and trying to avoid and overcome. And I'd say when my running practice is right in line with my food and recovery, if I can get all three of those dialed in, I tend to not spiral into kind of anxious tendencies.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely something that affects me, and I'm always kind of trying to be aware of and do the right things to keep it at bay.
Yeah, one thing we talk a lot about is becoming the observer of your own thoughts and your own emotions and working on coaching yourself through those times. Do you feel like you have a strong inner coach that kind of is that coach on your shoulder talking to you, or do you also get lost in those moments? I mean, I think we all do, of course,
Yeah.
but where are you on kind of mastering that self-coach for yourself?
Yeah, I think I go through ebbs and flows with it. I'll be honest, I keep going back to the running, but these big efforts like really are like repetition of how to deal with life, and it's kind of a parable to the rest of my life. So just after big runs, big multi-month projects, I usually find that I'm the best at identifying negative talk and stuff because you have to control it so much while you're out there, kind of pushing your body past the limit. And then as time progresses and I'm further away from a big effort, I kind of backslide. And I think the thing now is like I'm at a place where I understand I'm going to learn things through these efforts, but then it's like, how do you hang on to it longer?
Mm-hmm.
That's a real big component, and I think by mastering that more, it will help to make me a more well balanced across the board, not just these big ebbs and flows.
So you've used running as like a metaphor for life, getting to the finish line, but being there for the journey along the way and going through all the challenges. How many times have you gotten to a point where you literally were like, I have I have no idea how I could take another step, and yet I'm gonna have to do that? How many times have you been in that place?
Oh God, a lot. Yeah, a lot, a
Yeah.
lot, and that's really what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And that's really the thing now is like when I get there, not being surprised by it, and instead being like, oh, I worked really hard to get here. Now let's lean into it because this is where the growth happens.
Yeah.
And I think every time it really goes back to this idea of repetitions. Like anything we want to do well, the best thing to do is practice it. And through these efforts, you overcome a lot of obstacles externally and internally. And I think with that, it acts as like this like hyper like experience of growth because you're putting yourself against so many challenges that could take years to overcome in real life. But when you're out there pushing your body so hard, you have to do it over and over. Yeah. And therefore better at it in the end.
And so, but can you put yourself in one of those times where I don't know, you had blisters on top of blisters and your
Yeah.
body's locked up and, I can't even imagine, but what goes through your head and how do you work your way through it? Can you kind of take us through that mental process?
Yeah. I mean, I think the acknowledgement first and foremost is that it's temporary. Anything we're going through in life, good or bad, like it's only a blink of an eye. So in acknowledging that, I think I'm able to find gratitude for the experience itself. It's like if this is only going to be here for a minute, like let's not get caught up in the misery of it, but revel in it, look for the growth. So I think that's a big component of it. And then there's like making a deal with myself is like let's just get through this for the next couple of minutes and then we can reassess. And if I just do that over and over, I keep pushing that like I can't really do it, that quit carrot further and further out. I think that helps a lot, and it's one of the big tools I have in my toolbox. um, and then just like with each thing is becoming more confident in myself that like wherever I'm at I will overcome it. So just get the work done, just get through it. um, and then it's like the actual technical skill sets to figure out like, oh, this is going on, we probably need to up the salts, we need to up the hydration, that type of stuff. But yeah.
And then it seems like you've built an amazing community of people
Mhm.
around the running that, I mean, you always find the space to thank people in your life and the community that you've created. Can you talk a little bit more about community in general and how that's a part of a healthy way of life?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to these big efforts, yes, I'm always try to give credit where I can. I often refer to this as not what I've done, it's what we've done, and that's just because the community around me is so vital. In fact, we just released a film about my run against the Tesla, and that's a huge theme throughout. Is just the people that are there to support me and how important that is. Um, and it's something that I think in day to day, since leaving the restaurants, I've struggled with. Like when I was in the restaurant industry, it's very easy for me to create community. It's a place that it's like how I learned to do that. So now, having stepped away from that, it's been a couple years of learning how to reincorporate that, and I find that it's the most apparent and like I feel the most full with community during big efforts, whether they're my own or someone else that I'm crewing and supporting. And it's really comes down to just, I think it's hard in this day and age for us all to find a common goal, like a common good that we're all striving for. We've all got so much of our own shit going on in every direction. And so by focusing it in on a big run, then we're all on the same team. We've got the same objective. We're able to have the same setbacks and triumphs. And then that just brings us all to closer together. And then that seems to transcend the effort as well. Like afterwards, I just find that I'm closer and yeah, more appreciative of those that have been there for me and I get to be there for.
Yeah. And that translates to your life in general or to people's lives in general if they're not doing some huge challenges like this. um how important do you see community, finding a community, and do you have any thoughts on how somebody can go about doing that if they don't feel like they have one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's vital, probably more than any one thing. I mean, we are a social creature. And I think a lot of people get, they whittle their community down and they just assume that they're okay. But the reality is there's a lot going on and a lot that you're probably needing that you're not even really truly processing or accepting. And as far as like how to create it, I think, and this is something I wish I was even better at in day to day life, is just like stepping out of my comfort zone, like doing the things that like maybe like how often I know this happens for me, like somebody will be like, hey, we're doing this thing tomorrow or in a week, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm so excited, I'll be there, and then you find a way to flake right at the end.
Mhm.
And you really need to go back and remember that person that got excited, because like that was the truth talking. That was like the part of you that really does yearn for it. But we get settled into like being on our couch or whatever it is at home, and avoid those things. But yeah,
Mhm.
leaning into the uncomfortable, especially in social situations, because it's never as bad as you think, right?
Yeah,
So
usually.
yeah.
um one thing that I kind of think about when I think about coaching myself, and I think there's kind of those two camps of self-help and growth, is there's like the self-discipline on one side, and then there's the self-compassion. And I think about
Yeah.
David Goggins and maybe even you, like self-discipline, just do it. I don't care how much you're hurting and your feet are bleeding and you're whatever, and you're going to keep going and keep going. But you also talk about sustainability.
Yeah.
So where are you in finding that balance? What is balance? I mean, do we need balance? Like, or yeah, to me, it's like there's so many angles and so many different levels and complexities around when do I push myself? When do I go that extra mile, even though it hurts and I might not won't like be walking for a couple of days. And then there's I need to listen to my body and be compassionate to myself and make sure I'm doing the recovery. How do you kind of navigate all of those things?
I think it's like the acknowledgement of the ebb and flow of it. Like there's times in my life where it's like it's extremes, and it is pushing through the blisters, the blood, the pain, the hate, the hurt, and then like the pendulum's going to switch, right? Like I'm going to get done with this big thing, and the weeks after, I'm going to be kind of a bump on the log and just chill and feel accomplished, and like I don't need to do those things. And for me, like it's just not getting caught up in it. It's not over analyzing or stressing too much about it. I mean, looking, always being aware of, am I going down, some an unhealthy path, like unhealthy habits? And if so, like course correct. But then also acknowledging that like that's life. Like it's never going to become all rainbows, you know, butterflies. So I think for me, it's like, just let the ebb and flow of all of these aspects just happen. But yeah, don't get overstressed about it, because that just causes more issues than it's worth. I don't know.
And what do you see for your future, Robbie? Like what's happening in the next 5 years, the next 10 years? What about when you're 90? What do you envision that? What do you think?
Yeah, to a degree. I think like definitely looking for, where's my longevity in what I'm doing now, like continuing like a healthy lifestyle so that I can continue to push the envelope physically for at least another 10 years would be nice. But yeah, always looking to the next thing, definitely wanting to become more of a voice, like a definitive voice within this endurance space, so that when it's time for me to hang my shoes up, I can still speak up to it and help others in their journey. Um, I've always been really inclined to get on a sailboat as soon as my legs give out. So I think that'll be coming down the way. But yeah, just always trying to better myself, but also just enjoy the ride, not getting too overwhelmed with it, because life is short and we're never really guaranteed tomorrow. So trying to live wholeheartedly and fully in the day in front of me.
Yeah. So Robbie's sailing the world. What record are you going to break? Do you think that's going to always though be kind of a part of you? Is no matter maybe it's not running forever, but is it going to be like the next challenge? Like, do you go by challenges, and do you need that to keep you on track? If that makes sense.
No, I think I just really enjoy it. And there's a lot of growth coming out of it for me right now. But honestly, I'm not a very competitive person other than against myself.
Mm.
And I really, these challenges just set up the opportunity for me to explore this aspect of myself. I could see, when it gets time for the sailboat, maybe it's just going to be a lot more pleasure cruising and enjoying it. And yeah,
We'll
maybe
see.
we'll see.
We'll
We'll see.
see.
We'll see.
I'm not so sure about that. I love it. What would you say are your biggest challenges, the habits that you're still working on, maybe creating or changing in your life that would even take you to the next level in terms of holistic health and longevity for you?
I mean, I think when we spoke of one a little bit, is just continuing to develop community. Like I'm really good at it in these hyper focused moments, but I can also like kind of drift away and spend a lot of time at home alone and in my own head. So just becoming a little better at that. It like really putting myself out there and engaging with the community around me. Definitely would like to get a little better at that. Um, and then there's all kinds of things that I could do better at balancing. I still like can get really good at drinking a couple beers at night and maybe finding a little more balance in that at times. I think it's something I'm actively trying to do better at. Still don't I enjoy a good time, and I think everybody should not take themselves too seriously, but it's balance. I'm a Libra. I'm always trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. I'm a Gemini where I'm just crazy. And then how are you coming on your search for authenticity? You talk about that a lot.
Yeah, it's something that is definitely a huge aspect of why I do these things, is like searching for authenticity in my own life. And I feel pretty good about it right now. I think the place that's the hardest for me currently is the social media aspect, like trying to find the spot to be the most honest version of myself, but then also not giving too much of myself away to it.
Mm.
And that's a really hard one. I never really envisioned myself in this kind of influencer space. It just kind of inevitably happened with athletics. And yeah, I don't want to paint a inaccurate picture for others, but I also like don't want to spend my whole life projecting outward what my life is. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a weird space to be in and try to understand the best approach for me. Yeah, so I think that's one of them right now.
Oh, I am so with you on that. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I could not be on social media, I just took a month and a half off of social media, and it
Yeah.
was the most refreshing. It was such a refreshing experience, followed by a trip to Peru with 6 ayahuasca ceremonies. So that was that was
That
that's a
helped.
whole another thing. But yeah, just to find that balance of, yeah, not giving everything away, being able to keep some for yourself, but also being generous and sharing, but not, and being, showing the things that will be helpful to people. That's how I kind of also look at it. Will this be helpful? Will my vulnerability, is it just for
Yeah,
me is it for me, or is it for everybody?
I think that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, what will be helpful to everybody? Oh, this has been um so refreshing. Thank you for sharing all this with us. One more question, because I know I had read somewhere about you grow your own veggies on a stackable, because I'm in a condo, so
Yeah.
I'm trying to find my options. What is that, something you do, you and your wife?
Yeah, we do. It's called Let Us Grow is the name of
Let
the
us grow.
company.
Okay.
It's a hydroponic farm stand that allows you to grow up to 36 plants at a time in a 3 by 3 area. It's a fascinating company. They make the growing process as easily as possible. It's a friend of mine, Jacob Petchnick. He started the
Okay.
company years ago, but definitely people check it out. It's cool.
Let us grow. Okay.
Yeah.
And here's one more question I just thought of. The hydroponic, is there less nutrients that get, I mean, it's much neater and less messy. Is there
Yeah.
less nutrients that gets into the food because there's not soil involved, or does that not matter for some reason? Do you know?
It's getting nutrients via like powdered nutrients that hits like the same, for lack of a better term, like macros as we
Okay.
find in soil. Reality is the soil is very depleted in
Right.
most places at this point. So I think there's a give and take there, but then also considering the freshness of it as a plant comes off of the vine or out of the ground, it's losing like 50% of its nutritional value like every 4 days. So, in that I'm able to harvest it fresh, I think it can counterbalance any of those issues that exist. We do use it predominantly for leafy greens and for herbs. I think there are the more hardy stuff I would prefer to get from a local farm. But for those fresh greens, I mean, you can just taste it. The flavor profile is just so much more pronounced than what I can get at the grocery store.
I'm still, when I was in Italy eating those tomatoes, coming back
Oh
to the
God,
US, like, it's hard to eat a tomato here.
yeah, it definitely.
It's so delicious. Oh, okay. Thank you again, Robbie. I really, really appreciate your time. Thanks for sharing everything, and hope to see you again soon.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ellie. It was great.
Thanks.
Hey.